we've had a lot of great feedback from people on this series, and I think that, again, it's gonna, every other week when we do these, I think we're going to be looking at new information and what, how we progress into these next steps, and where we're going from there. But it's been fascinating for me because we're spending a lot of time on the phone, mostly trying to track down people that have been furloughed and now they're coming back, and we had to take them all off of our list, and now we have to put them back on the list when they come back. That's really been, from our standpoint, a lot of work to figure that one out. But it's interesting to have these conversations. The conversations have been awesome to just hear everybody's unique situation and what's happening, what they're doing.
Yeah, I got to say, you've built a really amazing community here, Kevin. I mean, the degree of sharing is really remarkable. I've been on calls where no one wants to say anything, and here everyone's really open, which is pretty special. So it's awesome.
I mean, thanks to all of you. Really appreciate you being here. Jack Lee, you guys all know, is the haiku master. I still love that. That was my favorite for Data Central. Alex Sadowski. Alex is a concept chef for Twin Peaks and part of Front Burner Restaurants. So he'll be talking about Front Burner as well and what's happening with their multiple brands that they have. Matt McMillan's the Vice President of Culinary and Beverage Innovation for Coopersock Winery and Restaurants. And I think their unique concept is going to play a role in this too, because of the wine club and all the different things that you do is quite unique. And I think maybe an example of some of the creativity that people will look to do as we get into our, this next phase of our recovery. And then James Bickmore-Hutt, he's a culinary R&D manager and corporate chef for Dole Packaged Foods. And he's got a lot of great information here about what they're doing and their innovation. And really, I'm impressed at how they are increasing your innovation and ability to do that at this time, which is very, very smart to do. So why don't we start out with, let's go to Matt first. So Matt, you guys are kind of new to the opening here, and why don't you take us through a little bit of, what stage you're at now and kind of why, you lagged and the success that you had when you were doing takeaway and with your wine.
Sure. Well, so first of all, hey, great to be here and see some names over on the right side. I miss everybody. We closed whatever that Tuesday, Wednesday was, and kind of just took a breath. And I would say about 3-4 days later, due to our wine club, we have over 430,000 people in our wine club. We needed to get our guests their wine and allow them to come to the restaurant to pick up. So we weren't ready to open up the restaurant for carryout yet, and carryout was such a minute part of our sales. So we ended up just opening up the tasting rooms and saw demand pretty quickly and saw how much people were drinking, me included. And so we had some good success there. So we put a plan in place to really take a look at our carryout sales. And we started that, I would say, the following Thursday. And we're able to start picking up some sales. And again, we just saw the increase in wine sales. I would say about a week to 2 weeks after that, we started doing curbside and then a third-party delivery, which if anybody saw Tim on the stage at NRA, probably said we would never do third-party delivery. We just didn't believe in it. And so obviously we've gotten into that business as well. But along the way, we really started to amp up our social media presence, doing a lot of, I started these chef hack videos, just, funny little things that I think as chefs we take for granted, how to, seed a pomegranate, how to chop garlic and ginger and all those sorts of things. So those were pretty successful. And then we got into doing some of the, we had some really interesting holidays along the way, right? So we had Easter and then Mother's Day, which we did some packages, and each time we got better and better. So we're doing a Father's Day, actually, where you pick up everything cold, and you grill at home. And then we just actually, in my kitchen, we shot a video last Friday of how to make everything on the grill or in the kitchen. And I think, for us, it was all about continuing to keep that engagement going with our wine club members and keep that connection, which is huge. We did a lot of fun things like, meet the members, where we would do Instagram live videos and then just randomly pull wine club members into the feed and just kind of say who they were and what they've been doing, and what their favorite Cooper's Hawk wine is and what their favorite dish is. We condensed our menu, down to I would say we're kind of cheesecake light when it comes to our menu. We have a lot of menu items, but we're not quite Cheesecake Factory. But I would say we probably pared it down to about 30 items. Yesterday, we just added on 6 to 7 more. And our goal is to probably every 3 weeks, just really thoughtfully, methodically add items back on and see where things land, and potentially maybe even take off some of those things that are just total pains. And then from an opening perspective, last week, we, our goal was, I would say about 3 weeks ago, we put a plan in place to open up restaurants through the end of July, just very methodically. And then when we saw the demand, we opened up 2 restaurants in Florida with full on with, at 50% in the dining rooms, and then 4 restaurants in Illinois with just patios. And the good thing is our newer model actually has a really nice size covered patio. So we opened up 22 restaurants yesterday, 11 full capacity, 11 patios, and then tomorrow we're opening up another 20, 15 full, 5 more patios, and then we'll have all but 1 restaurant open, which I believe is in Fort Lauderdale, and it's inside of a mall that is not open yet. So we're still kind of toying with that. But as as we're looking at week over week sales, yesterday wasn't a great sign. We opened up for dinner in those 22 restaurants, or I'm sorry, 22 minus 6, whatever it is, 18. We opened up 18 yesterday. The weather here in Chicago was pretty crappy, a ton of rain. So still did some sales, but again, in those restaurants where the weather was a little nicer, we're seeing really nice week over week sales, and we're probably 50 to 60% of our sales at this point of normal year over year sales, and we expect to see that continue to rise. So that's kind of a snapshot of where we're at.
When do you hope to open for lunch?
Oh, just tomorrow. Dinner the first day, and then lunch the next day.
Hey, your video that you're doing for Father's Day, they access that through your website, or are you going to have something that they carry away with a thumb drive or something when they leave?
So we just released yesterday the photos of the package on social media. Today, there's a kind of a teaser video that goes live on social media. And then the full-blown video will be in a link with the written instructions that they'll get in the box, as well as all on social media. There'll be a link there just to click. And then, again, it's kind of a fun instructional video right from my house in Glenview.
That's awesome. Why don't we go to Alex real quick, and then we'll get around to everybody. But Alex, talk to us, because you're really unique. I think probably the first company I talked to that are fully open, across the country, and have been for a little while.
Corporate restaurants and franchisees. So, and everybody's kind of in a different spot, as everyone knows, right? We started with the mindset of having 4 different phases to opening and to the menu, just on how do we reduce staff as much as possible. So it's a really odd landscape for us. It's like running 4 different restaurant concepts at one time, by everything you could imagine: supply chain, staffing, training, getting everybody up and going. So definitely challenging.
So talk us through, I know you've had some successes in some of them that are like over last year's sales.
Yeah, it's actually incredible. So our average store right now is doing between 70 and 80% of sales pre-COVID. Doesn't matter what amount of social distancing they're on. If it's 25% capacity, 50% capacity, just on average, 70 to 80%. So it's really positive, really incredible. And then we do have some of our smaller stores, kind of the less than or right around 5,000 square foot restaurants, are actually up over last year without any sports going on, really nothing driving business, with a limited menu, lower PPA. It's really just a great sign in some of the states of how badly people want to get out of the house.
How much of that is delivery or family meal?
So it was zero beforehand. We were, just like Matt said, adamantly against it.
Yep.
Right? Most of the bar food stuff that we serve doesn't travel that well. And now it's about 10%, but we're seeing it in some locations really catch on and be as much as 50% of our sales. So huge swing, mostly curbside. The third party stuff is just taking a little bit longer to catch on. And we've kind of introduced it a little bit phased in as well, right? Like we'll do Uber Eats one week and then we'll roll into Grubhub the next week just to kind of make sure that the guys at the restaurant can get their feet underneath them. We just don't want anybody to get totally run over. But I think we've talked about it a few times on these calls. This would have been a process that would have taken us 6 months to implement, and we rolled it out in about 6 days, fully. And from back end on IT, all the businesses helping us, condense orders, get it rolling through our Aloha system. It's just been really incredible to see how fast and flexible everyone has been to react to this.
The stores where you're even or above where you were pre-pandemic, those are still mostly not, you can't be at 100% dining capacity, right? It's 50% or 70%.
For most of them, it's 50%. That's really the average. Some of the locations in Texas on Monday will go to 75%.
Yep.
But it doesn't really add any seats because we're still 6 feet.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing here too in Tennessee, which is now it's a 6-foot rule. That's the limiter. But if those stores are 50% and they're actually up versus last year, is it higher check average? Is it just that it's crowded all times of the day, or what's the?
There is a butt in that seat if it's available all day long.
Yeah.
And we've actually really implemented some stronger controls on responsible drinking and stuff like that too. So we've seen a pretty big drop in our PPA. It's just an increase of traffic at those smaller stores by a massive percentage. It's really interesting to see.
You know what's interesting though? So the independents are doing creative things like putting up plexiglass or whatever right in between booths. Of course, it's a very difficult thing to do with a chain that's got 80 or 90 units, right? Mm-hmm. So have you guys talked about that at all and considered it?
Yes, and we've done it for some of the locations. We actually had some very creative operators at the franchise locations that have kind of come up with best practices depending on what model of restaurant they have. Just because we've had this, evolving prototype, right? We don't just have a cookie cutter restaurant built anywhere. So if your restaurant is heavier with booths, we went with plexiglass to cover up the entire front. We had some restaurants and states take out all of their bar high tops and push them directly up against the bar top to make their bar seating, and then to guarantee that they have 6 foot of social distance to the bartenders and still give you that same sort of bar feeling. We've pivoted to be really heavy with custom content with Chive TV to kind of give everyone that sport feeling, lots of clips, lots of replays and stuff like that, just to kind of keep the energy up in the restaurants. And it seems to be working out surprisingly well.
Are you seeing that the customer is different at all, or is it the same demographic?
Oh, not at all. It is it's our diehard fans. And now instead of coming once or twice a week, they're coming 3 or 4 times a week. And another interesting thing that we've seen is actually the tip percentage for our employees has skyrocketed.
Yeah, I'm sure that's up.
We're in like the 35% range right now, average tip.
Yeah, that is not surprising. It's a great commentary on humanity too. But yeah, not surprising.
Just something for everybody to look forward to, just because it's kind of what gave us hope and why we accelerated how many restaurants we were opening. Because when you start seeing all this sales traction and we had all of these phased plans in place, what if we can't hit this sales goal? What's our break-even point? What's our rent look like? Right? They had everybody in every restaurant was ranked, which ones they wanted to open first. But then when they started making money, we're like, we got to get everything open as fast as we can.
Are people staying longer as well?
Not really. It's gone up just a little bit. I believe it's about 15 minutes longer.
Okay.
So not a shocking amount of time.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and some of the other things too that you guys have done, I know it is like bar wise and all that kind of thing. Are you noticing people are drinking more, or can you tell, or is it pretty much like where it was before?
It's so for us, we ran into problems the first week for every location that we've opened. It's been the problem of people when they pour themselves a drink at home, right? A single is big, right? A double is a full glass. So that's been a struggle. That's kind of why we saw a need to crack down and really make a point of doing responsible alcohol service. We haven't seen anybody really getting crazy. They're still trying to balance, and this is coming from the guest, right? They want a value, but they're also willing to upgrade and get the premium option if they think that that is a value as well. So like, for instance, we opened up and I instantly sold out of every bottle of Pappy I've had in Texas. And that's at $50 a shot, right? On average. So it's like the guys want $3 beers, but they also want that premiumization still. So it was kind of interesting to see.
Hey, that'd probably be a good segue to you, James. I know you guys do a lot in the beverage world. What's happening with you guys and, the beverage innovation and whatever you're doing now?
Yeah.
Opening up?
Yeah, I mean, so our company, as of June 2nd is 169 years old. So it's like and kind of like our first product was pineapple in a can, right? So, and pineapple juice kind of came along with that. And so we're trying to figure out how we, kind of keep providing solutions. And our new leadership at the company is kind of allowing us to really operate in the food service realm, almost like we're a startup. So we're looking at, new SKUs and new ideation and kind of new customization and really trying to fit the solution portfolio as a whole, as opposed to necessarily providing you, only kind of one kind of beverage solution. We're trying to be more of an entire fruit portfolio solutions partner. So a lot of the beverage work that we're looking at right now is, trying to find different, kind of simple or logical combinations of pineapple juice with some other kind of other ingredient, keeping the labels still really nice and clean, but making it a little bit more logical for like the larger beverage experience, trying to track what kind of cocktails are doing and what people are kind of looking for. And now that the summer is kind of coming out and they're looking to celebrate a little bit more and that they can finally get out of their homes. So a lot of the ideations that we've been doing, or a lot of the kind of concept development that we've been doing, has been trying to follow that and not necessarily, keeping up with what the trend was prior to the COVID. Right now, we're trying to give them some form of nostalgia. So we're playing back to, great old classic tiki cocktails and, all those fantastic, Mai Tais and other iterations of, very fruit forward cocktails and beverages. But we're seeing great application of that. People are looking for, that holiday escape without necessarily having to, sit, an aisle across from somebody on a plane. So that's a really interesting kind of flex for us. We haven't really been able to kind of have that freedom to maybe push our beverage solutions that far. And it's kind of exciting, for a company the size of ours and kind of the age of ours, a new product development was kind of like especially in food service, was usually customer driven, and now it's company driven, which is kind of cool. So it's kind of interesting. We got a little bit of downtime and, a quieter period in our year. And it allowed us to kind of really stretch our innovation legs.
That's awesome. That is.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit too. You mentioned about the, like many more people now are seeming to be more open to frozen product because of distribution and other, points. Talk to that a little. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah. So, I think the problem that everybody was kind of facing was, with takeout and delivery, reductions on dine-in services and stuff like that, you couldn't really pick your sales mix. You couldn't forecast it like you normally did. And especially with priorities of distribution going to essential products like toilet paper and cleaning supplies and stuff like that, and kind of moving away from fresh foods, fresh food supply, it kind of made our product a little bit more relevant. So, we started pivoting ideas and concepts that we were generating more away from kind of incorporating fresh product and more kind of looking at how do you utilize product that you don't necessarily have to race ripening on. If you have one guy or two guys in a line where usually you would have 7, they're not going to be able to get through as much prep, right? They're not going to be able to put out as much volume. They need to make more logical choices in the recipes that they're producing, that it travels well in a box, or that it can sit in your larder or in your fridge for longer than 3 days, right? Because you're not turning through the product. And your distributor's not going to deliver to you every other day. They're delivering to you sometimes every other week, right? So it got crazy. I mean, we had to really adjust our entire internal thought process of, well, where people would otherwise be really adamant that they had to use fresh bananas for all their smoothies, right? They started actually looking at our product as, hey, you're not racing ripening, right? It's there when you need it. It kind of became a little bit more flexible, right? Our product turned up in the same condition that it was, regardless of how long it took in the distribution chain pipeline. And so that became a really important selling point for us. I mean, we've been touting it forever, right? But, finally kind of like the relevance kind of caught up. So people started approaching frozen and packaged kind of products in a different consideration, where they were like, well, we've got to save money and we've got to be a little bit, more intelligent around how we're kind of using labor and using prep. So yeah, it was an interesting kind of turning point for us, because we finally found solutions that were fitting a very real need. And it didn't really force us to change our POS too much, right? I mean, that was kind of the interesting thing.
I think James really hit it on the head. I mean, the operator work that Data Central has done has shown that 51% of operators say they're switching away. They've switched away from fresh product during the time, and the format they've moved most toward is frozen.
Yeah.
So I think your experience is, and it's for exactly the reason you said, they're getting one delivery a week or one delivery every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's all you can do right now.
Yeah, it's terrifying, right? As an operator, you watch your product spoil because where you predicted that you would sell, 20 tickets of one item, you might sell 2 because nobody decided to call in for chicken wings that night, right?
Yeah.
So, that was kind of the odd thing. And we saw operators and restaurants kind of really struggling with that. Typically the smaller, operators were really struggling really hard. And so they started turning towards more kind of like full utilization of product, and kind of scrap cookery, which was kind of cool. And so we pivoted our recipes to that, so it was fun, from a sheer culinary standpoint. It was just fun to kind of get back to a little bit more, kind of grassroots, style of cooking.
Yeah. Alex, you hit on a point too that Alex talked about as well. You had mentioned to us that the labor, like in your different phases, you've said prep work, which you just said, James, was so tough because you don't have many people in the kitchen. And you had like staggered in your different phases, how many people you had in the kitchen. Talk to that a little bit, because I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah. So we tried to work backwards, right? So we did a sales projection for 100%, 75%, 50%, and 25%. And we used those dollar amounts to try and engineer the phases of the menu for what money we would have to spend, right? We were really treating it like, a dollar in is a dollar out, right? We couldn't go to the bank, we couldn't borrow money, right? It had to be self-sustaining. So it really got down to what is our most popular items. Can we even be willing to risk offering that? And thankfully, the marching orders from Joe, our CEO, was, hey, we have to do what we have to do to survive, right? So our phase 1 menu, for example, was extremely limited. It was 5 items total, right? It was chicken wings and chicken tenders and some French fries. And that phase in particular, right, we're under the assumption of you don't have any labor. It's going to be managers doing it, because what happens if we call them up and nobody wants to come back? So The nice thing is we didn't have to run that menu except for one location. So really, we are mostly operating on our phase 2 menu, which is kind of the 25% to 50% occupancy, but you could run it with 2 cooks in the kitchen. Extremely limited labor, extremely limited prep time, but we're trying to get every popular item we possibly could get out of that. And then we've slowly been adding in. So makes it really difficult, right? Again, it's like we're running all of these different brands within the same brand. But really, we're trying to just be flexible and give it to the individual operators and help support them be able to do it. Like if you have a request from a guest that keeps coming up, we'll figure out a way to get that item to them. So
Alex, Matt, do you have a thought as to what the roadmap back to a full menu looks like and how long that's going to take?
Well, we already have some going to the full menu. We're at about, I'd say, 15% fully open. Really, the reason why we've been scared to do that has been mostly supply chain. And I saw Diana just asked, Diana, I'm sorry, asked for paper menus, and mobile menus has been what saved us, right? Going to a QR code, having a mobile menu, having the menu based on, the guest individual cell phone, just doing a printout black and white menu at the restaurant itself that's editable. It's the only thing that's kept us in the game and kept us flexible enough to do this.
I think that's going to be a long-term menu solution.
100%. I think it's going to be great for us. And I think it's going to really help the innovation when we kick it back in. We could change the menu now instead of every 6 months because of printing cost and distribution. I could do it overnight from my phone.
Yeah, I really do think your phone is going to be the future menu, and we've said this for a long time. And the best thing of that is that there's a picture for every single item on the menu, right? You see that behavior already. Sometimes people go in, they'll flip through Yelp or Google or something, they'll find the dish they want, and they'll say to their server, I just want this, without even looking at the actual menu. Like, you know so much more by looking at that thing than you by reading the description of it, right?
I thought we were going to run into issues just because our guest skews, 95% male and over the age of 50, right? And if you told somebody, hey, use your phone to do it, they'd say, screw you, hand me a menu. We haven't run into that at all. People are really, from that part, people are really flexible because they realize it's just streamlining the process for them to get what they want.
So, I mean, you've had such an explosion of traffic. Given your demographic, is that just like a lot of guys like taking vacation from the family for a few hours? So we're actually seeing our traffic go the opposite direction. So yes, it's all of our regulars, but we're starting to see a lot more females coming in. Oh, interesting. Are they coming in with the males, or are they coming in different groups?
In all female or in with the males, we're also seeing a huge amount, especially in the to-go third-party area in kids' food. So it kind of accelerated the, I guess, perception that we are a family restaurant, which we fought for a very, very long time, right? And I mean, it's just really by location, and I could see why, it might have been harder before to justify to your family, hey, we're going to Twin Peaks, but if it's what's open in your neighborhood and it's busy and it's going to be a pretty good value, we're seeing a lot of people come in.
That's actually sort of cool. Now I have a bunch of 7-year-old kids because of the delivery thing saying my favorite restaurant is Twin Peaks. So
yeah,
it's a good conversation.
Really, it's driven by the chicken wing. Really, is what we're seeing, right? You can't make that great of a chicken wing at home.
So actually, I want to ask a question, and this actually touches on. Can I just show a quick stat? Because you hit chicken wings, and we talk about delivery. So this is something I've been meaning to understand, and I think only a chef can really answer this. So let me share a piece of information. So we have, let's go past this. We have a platform called Scores where we collect every new item and limited time offer from top chains every month, and we have consumers rate them. And historically, we rate on things like purchase intent, uniqueness, draw, which is would you make a special trip, and we continue to do all of this. On top of it, during the pandemic, we added 3 new metrics. Would you want this item for delivery? Would you want this item for to go? Would you want this item for dine-in? And we're going to continue tracking every new item along those measures as well going forward. And you can look at some of the items, right? So here's just 3 examples. And at the bottom, we have their format appeal scores, right? So the honey butter chicken biscuit at Wendy's, people get, yeah, I'd like to have this to go. Maybe for dine-in too, but pretty much not for delivery. The seafood platter, definitely dine-in. I can't really see it having it any other way. The Nashville hot wings scores really well for delivery. That 45 is actually very high as far as delivery numbers go. Delivery just tends to score lower overall. And we see this in other work we've done too, where people say wings I think of as a deliverable food, but I don't think other cuts of chicken are. Is there something about a wing that makes it like just scientifically travel better than another piece of chicken, for instance? Or is this purely a case of we've conditioned people to think of wings as delivery food because they've been on pizza menus for so long?
For me,
I think it's a little bit.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Alex.
You go ahead, Matt. I'll go after.
I was gonna say, as a consumer and also from a chef perspective, wings, it's not like a salad where there's a ton of different textures and ingredients. You got wings that are basically fried and sauce. So the degradation is very minor from what you get, to what you get in the restaurant to what you get at home typically. So, and then the vegetables, as long as they're cold, you get pretty high marks, I think.
But are wings different than, let's say, tenders in any regard in terms of travelability? Consumers think there is, and I'm just trying to get to.
I would say based upon the lean meat, right, you get a greater chance of like it drying out in the travel, whereas wings are already like
because they're wet.
They're covered in sauce and stuff, right? So
it would have been interesting if I know Dave Woolley was busy too, but I wish we had him here because we kind of battle it out about wings. So what we see is the scores and the intent to repurchase just from our own database. If it's a sauced wing of any form, like a bone-in wing, it's really high. Where you switch is you start seeing bad scores on the boneless and on the tenders if they're in a sauce, because the perception is it's going to be soggier. So I really do agree with Matt. I think it's kind of that perception, right, of you get it at a restaurant. It's almost the same product when you get it delivered. If it's a bone-in wing tossed in sauce, what you're getting. You could see the sales increasing for like places like Wingstop, right? They're just having this meteoric rise right now. I really think it's that bone-in that really gives you some wiggle room.
Alex, did you have to work really hard on your breading too for those other items to make sure that even though they're breaded in sauce, that the breading doesn't totally break down when it travels?
Absolutely. And we were really cognizant for our to-go packaging too. So thankfully we had switched to new to-go packaging right before Corona COVID had happened. So we went with a very ventable box that also has a moisture barrier on the bottom, and it's made out of cardboard. So to minimize all of the steaming possible, any sort of sogging imaginable, we just wanted to make sure we got something crispy to the guest. They were willing to sacrifice like temperature level. They were not willing to sacrifice that crispness. That was the quality identifier.
So here's a chef challenge for you. So here's another chart worth looking at. This is for the months of March and April. I haven't included the May numbers yet, but for March and April, all the new chain menu items launched, broken out by menu item type at the bottom, and what the average appeal is for those items for delivery versus to go or for dine-in. And you could see there's some crisscrossing where sometimes certain categories are more thought for to go than dine-in, but this is based on individual new chain menu items, about 400 plus over the last couple of months. There's only one category where the average item in that category beats either to go or dine-in, and that's where delivery beats to go or dine-in, and that's pizza. For everything else, the delivery line, which is the pink one, is substantially below the appeal for to go or for dine-in. And I guess the question I would ask to you as chefs is, what do you do to bring that pink line up in some of those non-pizza categories? because we're not asking people, hey, on average, do you think salads are good for delivery? We're asking this specific salad at this, that just was introduced. Would you consider this as a delivery item or not? And this is the average of all those salads in that case. And delivery is always lower.
Jack, so question, is there any halo to this whole line being so low because of the experience around delivery, or is this purchase intent connected with quality?
Maybe, but then again, I mean, look at pizza, where the line is actually pretty high, right? All the way to the far left.
Yeah.
Pizza does well there. So it's like we've been conditioned to think that pizza works for delivery, and our experiences have led us to conclude that some of these other categories are not delivery things. So people are still ordering these, but I think they're ordering these with the expectation there might be some compromise.
Well, Jack, I'll throw something in here.
Yeah.
I think the pizza industry has done an amazing job
Oh,
of figuring out how to deliver it hot to the door, right? And I think you look at all these other products, many of them have failed just because you're looking at a delivery service that's 45 minutes to an hour, unless you live in a major hub city and it's going to be there in 15 minutes. The rest of us around the country are getting this stuff 45 minutes later, and it just doesn't survive. And they figured out, and most of them do their own deliveries too. So look at it that way. It's almost like more like to go than it is delivery, because it's their own vehicles. They have a system down to get it there as fast as possible, as opposed to a third party who may take an extra 15 minutes longer, whatever that figure is. I don't know what that is.
So I guess that's a good question. So what is it about a pizza? Let's say you had a burger place that had its own delivery system that was just as efficient as a pizza restaurant does. Is there something about a pizza itself that is more deliverable, that travels better from a culinary perspective? Or could a burger travel as well?
We heard that on our first, the first webinar we did. Donald from Cheesecake Factory said how much time and effort they put into trying to figure out how to deliver their great burger. And it was interesting what he ended up with. He said they ended up figuring out that what has been going on for years, again, or McDonald's and what have you, and those are the guys that it's in paper. I mean, they figured out the best way to do it is to do it just the way they do it, to try to find that that perfect delivery. What do you guys think, Matt, Alex?
I think it's physics. I mean, with pizza, you've got a massive surface area, very thin, so heat dissipates, but it's kept in. It's paper, so I mean the moisture wicks out. A burger, so heat rises, right? I mean, a burger is stacked, right? Unless you have it, separated. I mean, so it's a perfect food. I mean, and if you look at what other than pizza has been carried out or delivered the most, maybe it's Chinese food, which travels pretty well.
And it's interesting because you could even see. So I would agree. We didn't come to this knowing we were going to be talking pizza physics, but it's awesome. But you look at something like pasta, which to me, actually, my experience with pasta have been pretty positive for delivery, but it just doesn't get there perceptually. I would argue that pasta actually travels probably pretty good in certain circumstances, but a lot of consumers don't perceive it that way. They think of it as something where you sit down and have like a fork and knife meal at the restaurant. So I guess that's one of the things that I would focus on is how do we just perceptually get that pink line up as an industry if we really want to keep moving on the delivery train.
Sounds like you have a lot of stocks in the delivery companies. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping for better food delivered to my house too. So.
Hey, I think it's been a back burner. I mean, carryout's been a back burner.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really want to make food great to go or delivery, technically you have to prepare it differently. I mean, sauces have to be reduced less. I mean, because everything, soaks up in pans and stuff, or containers. So it's just going to take focusing on it. And I think the good restaurants are going to do it quick.
One thing that we heard from consumers, or one third party was just getting started, was we'd love to have ovenable packaging. In that, literally the whole package, I could just throw in the oven, I won't start a fire. Is there anything like that exists where you get your delivery food and you just throw the whole damn bag in there for 3 or 4 minutes, makes it nice and hot, kills off any virus, because people think that heat will kill the virus too at the same time, and people are actually doing that kill step at home right now.
Yeah. The interesting one is there's a question I was going to bring up. Karen Harris is on, and she is a long-term member who's back as a member from Papa Murphy's. And I wish she could speak to this because they really did. They worked long and hard to find that tray that you can actually just take the salt, pop it in the oven, and bake your pizza at home. So there's been some work done on it. I'm certainly not an expert on this. Maybe you guys know more about this. Even James, I don't know if you've had any experience in that, working in packaging as well. I'm not sure.
I think you're seeing a lot of that ovenable packaging, and Amy Smith just talked about it too, kind of as the food kits, right? So kind of the family pack food kit sort of things.
Yeah.
You're seeing a lot of those now come in, at least I am, and even to my own house, of take this item, and they have like it'll be in an aluminum pan with an aluminum lid, and they have directions right on top or included with the food, and put in your oven for this amount of time. It's ready.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, hey, I'll go to that question that Karen had because I think it's one that's very important that people want to know about. She was saying dealing with when you're getting outages from suppliers and not being able to get product. Matt, I thought you had a great line yesterday about one of the products that you are making and that you're trying to reduce out of your menu. Some of that as well, but also I know both of you had some great comments about the outages and what you're doing and how you're having to correct or make changes.
Yeah, I think early on we had to work with our vendors, and I'll pick on Cisco for a little bit. They're a great partner, but we had to make some decisions like, hey, so for right now, we're not going to have certain bacons on the menu. So okay, put it all in the freezer. All right, we're not going to have 3-ounce chicken on the menu. All right, put it in the freezer. So we were beholden to some of that product. So we did have to go through that first. So we had to get some frozen product. Our restaurants aren't used to pull thaw, so it was like, okay, then we had to teach everybody, how do you do that? Burger meat, I think across the country, burgers were in really short supply, and all ground beef. We patty our own burgers from ground chucks, and there was probably 2 weeks where it was spotty, where we had to use some frozen product, and it was killing me. Another one is also as we're bringing menu items back on, we have to be very careful about cross-utilizing product. I think that one of the things I brought up yesterday was green beans. We buy bushels of fresh green beans, but we're not using a ton right now, and because it's more volume, the restaurants is a little bit lower, and so I'm allowing everybody to use the clipped and trimmed green beans for a very short period of time. I mean that's a killer for me. But, for the most part, I think Cisco's done a nice job with getting their legs back underneath them. And we're giving them 3 weeks at a time with some of these menu rotations as we add items back on so that they can work with our, anybody that we have contracts with products on, because we contract a lot of items, as most of us do. So it's, we just have to be very methodical and very thoughtful about the way we add things back on. And then you got the whole labor piece, right? So that's another concern with, as we add things back on, we can't get out over our skis and add too many things that causes a lot of prep and a lot of single-use items and, all that good stuff.
Have you had many customers notice that the food was different at all, or?
The only thing that we had, again, we used a 5-ounce chicken breast, and those were some of the ones that went in the freezer. We had some guest comment about the chicken sandwich being a little tough. And it's like our number one, so it's just ranch chicken sandwich. I'm like, mother. But it was only a couple days, but we did. We won't sub anything that's going to, like we have a company that makes these handmade ricotta gnocchi for us in Chicago. I'm not going to sub a potato gnocchi or some, gnocchi off the shelf. I'd rather 86 it, So we wouldn't sub something that's going to have a dramatic impact on a profile or something that we serve.
So if I could ask, and this may be a question for everyone, where does your innovation process sit right now? I think, James, you said you're doing more sort of traditional classic type drink innovation currently. Matt,
We're
Go ahead.
seeing brands though come to us and asking for kind of like tailored solutions to kind of what their new struggle is, right? So, and just based upon our now flexibility, we're able to kind of like try and fit some of that. But yeah, I mean, where some brands are starting to kind of like reinvigorate their innovation pipeline, they're finding that the new normal means that they have to adhere to either new guidelines internally for their own company or figure out a new rhythm with their distributor. So it means that they have to find and source new kind of SKU items that fit, either a prep need or a supply need type thing. So we're working on our end to try and collaborate with that. And that's kind of interesting. I mean, that's kind of, forcing us to kind of take a new approach to our portfolio and, kind of increase the bulk item kind of offering. Cost is a much larger sensitivity at this point. So trying to introduce products that are a little bit more cost sensitive as well, which is really interesting. So that's kind of our innovation pipeline at this point.
Yeah, you had something on that subject earlier about the procurement and problems with that. And I thought it was very interesting about your fear of what's going to happen down the road with the franchisees because of some of the changes you have to make. Can you talk to that if you don't mind?
Absolutely. I know we have Grant and Mr. Frankie on here too, which is pretty funny because they both lived in my brand before. So, I mean, we had a hard, fast rule that everything was fresh and everything was scratch. And now, because we've had to make those kind of sacrifices just to get product in to meet our kind of, exceptional demand over our sales projections, when do we turn that off, right? I know that that's going to be a huge fight with the franchisees because they don't care. They don't care if it's fresh or frozen. They care about bottom line dollars. And then they're going to go back to, kind of the question Jack asked. I really feel like these franchisees are going to say, well, we didn't get any complaints about it. That's a really hard conversation to have, right? It's going to end up being me sitting there saying, I told you so. Why are you making this decision? Because I say, right? It's going to be like talking to your little kid.
So I might add, the one thing we've seen very consistently from consumers is they're really forgiving right now. Even if they had a suboptimal experience, they will not voice that. They're just happy to be there, and they understand things aren't going to be the same, and you're just getting up and going. So, I mean, you have that in your back pocket. It's not like people didn't notice. They just didn't say anything.
So a lot, just because, we have such a high concentration in Texas and it's been open longer.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing that curve tail off.
Yep.
Because I'm dealing with a lot of the guest complaints or being in the restaurants helping out, and the guys are kind of over it. Right? Our average guest wants what they want. They want comfort, and they don't really want to buy any of the excuses. They might be a little bit understanding, but not really. Maybe you get a week's worth of time now, not a month.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think going back to this and the menu items, and when you grow back to your full menu. I know there was a little talk we had yesterday about some of those items might be convenient to take off today, right? Because everybody has those pain items, right, that you want to get rid of. But do you think this is going to be the opportunity to say this is, we just can't do it anymore for whatever reason?
Absolutely. We're using it as an excuse, straight up.
I think a lot of people are.
And I think you'll see it. And kind of like we talked about yesterday, a lot of people saw that shrink the last recession, right? In 2008, 2009, they saw if we reduce the amount of SKUs we have, the amount of food we have, we can draw more money to the bottom line. We can survive that much longer.
I think when you make a good business case for it, like this morning, I was talking to my assistant, and I sent her a list, and she came up with her own list, and they were pretty well aligned. And I would say it was probably 7 to 10 items. And I said, okay, put it in a spreadsheet, single-use items, single prep items, difficulty of execution, difficulty of prep. And when you take a look at a list like that and you're kind of in a vacuum, just looking at it from that perspective, I think a lot of companies are going to do it.
So the onion ring?
We don't have onion rings. That was Robert Pesh. Our our chief marketing officer used to work with Robert at and still keeps in touch with him at Cheddar's. So I know they had a conversation about some menu items like that as well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So, hey, while we're with you, Matt, talk a little bit more about, you said you're going to be doing some virtual wine programs with your wine club. I thought that was really cool and interesting.
Yeah.
And maybe foster some thought for other members to go, how can we take an outer restaurant experience, and make it into something that really binds something as a better customer?
Yeah. So, we've always had a pretty good social media presence, but we've really amped it up. And so part of our DNA and our brand, we do monthly wine club dinners. So all the restaurants do these same night it's like the first Tuesday of every month, and they're themed. And we typically sell them out, but they're really constrained by the four walls of whatever private dining area that restaurant has. Well, and we also do these Friends of Cooper's Hawk events where we'll do an event at a specific either restaurant or location off-site with a Richard Blaze, Ann Burrell, Fabio Viviani. But again, all those are constrained by the size of the venue space, right? So we had a crazy idea. We're doing a wine collaboration. It's our fourth wine collaboration with Jean-Charles Boisset. And the name of the wine is Liberté. It's a French-American blend. And we said, you know what would be really cool? So Tim McHenry, our founder, and John Charles are going to do an Instagram live event on June 25th. And we said, hey, how cool would it be when you come to pick up your wine of the month that you could also purchase a really cool box that has, a couple of artisan cheeses, some sliced salumi, some nuts, a chocolate bar from Oakville Grocery. And by the way, we're only going to charge $34.99 for it, so it's almost a no-brainer. So we say, okay, how many are we going to sell? So we're prepping 2,200 of these boxes around the country. We've allocated them out to all the restaurants, and it's similar to what we learned when we were doing these packages for the event for the holidays. We learned kind of how many each restaurant typically will sell, and so that's the first one we're doing, and then we're also gearing one up where you'll actually be able to come and pick up a meal for our launch of our second Camille wine, which is the wine that Emily Wines, our master sommelier, has created. So Camille Brave was the first wine, and then Camille Proud will be coming out in, I think, August or September. So we're going to do a whole dinner around that as well. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
That might be a good segue into, I know there's a lot of people who have questions, and we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but the menu innovation. So, coming back in, people are going to look at your, normal comfort items, the ones they come to you for, right? But then at some point, you're going to push that envelope with brand new innovations to try to get new customers in or bring customers back in for a different reason. What's your guess on a timeline for that? Is it going to be September-ish, October, next year? What?
Yeah, I mean, we do a ton of innovation, and we have a lot in our pipeline and a lot in our toolbox and repertoire. So we do a different chef recommendation paired with our wine, lunch, and dinner every month, and that changes. So we stopped doing it for the first 2 months. We started back up in May, but because we didn't do something for a couple months, we actually have some things in the pipeline. So we've already started back with the specials or chef recommendations that we call them, and it's a bummer, but both of my chefs, Randall and Chris, are both on furlough right now as well, because our cafe is also closed in our building, which was a big part of Chris's job, where we feed 1,800 people in the building every day, which is where our test kitchen is. So yeah, I would imagine we'll start really kind of gearing up. I would say more August. Once all the restaurants are open, we kind of see where things are trending, and we get back to all right, it's go time. Because we're still, we're in growth mode. We're still opening up a lot of restaurants.
I could ask,
but we put them on hold.
Yeah, my personal thought is that it would be very unlikely that we go back into some sort of a state of lockdown. I feel like this reopening process is essentially a one-way street. I just think people aren't going to tolerate that. But
I agree.
If that were to happen and the state said, hey, you got to close, do you have a playbook already in your back pocket for what you're going to do? You know what the menu is going to look like, et cetera? Can you share any of that, or?
Yeah, I can speak to it a little bit, Jack. I mean, we've been looking through that lens for everything that we've been doing. We fully shut down our restaurants at the end of March. So we weren't doing the to-go food. We weren't doing any of the grocery kits, nothing. So we really took that time to clean up the restaurants, get everything sanitized, fix everything we possibly could. And from operations and kind of the rollout plan, it was, can we make this a two-way street? What worked well for that initial shutdown? What did we learn from it? What could we have done better? And then now, as we're adding things back in and adding people back in, we're keeping that in our mind too and saying, if we have to shut down this state or this city, we have that plan in place just to try and make us a little bit more flexible. Maybe, you know, it's not Corona, but something else could come up in the future. And we just want to have that playbook ready, like you said.
Yeah. And maybe just a sign of the times with all the recent news and the protest and the movement for racial justice, has that impacted any of your brands or companies in any way, whether it's business, traffic, what your brand is doing? It's a lot to cram into 3 minutes, but
So we think alike. That was my next question as well. And did it impact your business by it being in front of your units or something?
Yeah, for us, we had a number of restaurants that were closed for a couple of days. Kansas City was closed, I think, for almost a week at the plaza there. We have a very large restaurant right on Oak Street in Chicago. We actually boarded up prior to most of the other ones on that street. So we didn't suffer any damage there, although we were closed for a couple of days, but that street was decimated. And then we had just a number of, I mean, just the suburbs really surprised me. I mean, we closed Naperville, you know, we closed, you know, Oak Park for at least a day, if not 2 days. So yeah, it did have some significant impact.
And same for us. We wanted to be very cautious and protect our employees as much as possible and just know that they were supported by us. So really it was, you know, do we even open up for some of the locations? Other locations, what time are we going to shut down to make sure everyone could be home and safe? And really it was kind of play it by ear, just because it was so different and really fluid situation depending on the city.
I mean, from our standpoint, we kind of pivoted really quickly, and our company was started donating really rapidly to a lot of the kind of like legal funds and support causes. Kind of being here in LA and kind of witnessing a lot of the very vocal movement that's been happening here. You know, our offices are a little bit a ways from kind of downtown LA, but we're still seeing kind of vocalization and protests and marches even out where our headquarters are. So, you know, a lot of our employees are kind of all over the country. And so our company was really incredible. And they changed the color of our logo on all of our social accounts and, you know, and kind of made sure that, you know, it was very vocalized that our company was in strong support of everything that's happening. Our president sent out a letter to everybody in the company kind of reinforcing his support of anybody's kind of willingness to go out and march and kind of vocalize their support or opinion. So the company's been really kind of interesting. It's very refreshing to kind of have that level of support from a corporate structure, especially with a brand that's as visual as ours. Yeah, it was kind of nice.
Great. Well, we are at 5 o'clock. Like I said, these things fly by, but I think this is great information. Thanks so much for all of you for being on here. Jack, of course, you know, Matt, Alex, and James. Just thanks for bringing so much, you know, really good information to our members and sponsors. And again, thanks to all of our members that were on here and all of our sponsors that were on. We really appreciate it. We are all looking forward to sometime this fall getting back to our schedule so we can get face to face and share a glass of wine together. But again, we will have another one of these in 2 weeks. And I also want to close out with Jack. Why don't you mention a little bit more about our fun competition, because the deadline's Friday.
Oh,
we've
yeah.
had a few people come in and actually do that, but explain to them a little bit about the process, if you would.
So many of you should have already gotten access, and if you haven't, get it from us real quick to something called Food Studio. And I can just maybe.
It's on our website. A link to it's on our website as well, both websites.
Yeah, it's our virtual innovation tool where you can design menu items in real time and get instant feedback using AI and what we know about consumers and what things are trending. And it sort of tells you, will people like your dish or not? And is it a unique dish or is it not? And do the pairings go together or not? So the idea is you will each create one item using that platform and you'll submit it. And then we will test those items with consumers. And whoever wins a prize from Kevin. What are we calling it? The ICCA.
ICCA GCIA prize closet. It's actually we have 2 storage units, so trust me, there's a lot of gifts in there.
Leftover swag.
Yeah, it is. But I thought what was really cool on this too is I know sometimes you don't want to maybe put out there what you're going to do within your own company, something you're looking at and that's in the pipeline. But there might be one of those ideas out there that you had that has been beat down every time you brought it up. And it might be a chance to throw it out there and see if there is some interest from consumers on it.
Yeah, so if you need access and you haven't gotten it yet, you could contact me. And if you don't have my contact info, I think you can hit up Kevin and he'll connect us as well.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks everyone. We will be back in 2 weeks, but anything else we can do at the headquarters office to help anybody, please just let us know.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Take care, everybody.